I'm getting a heart attack for the epilogue performance for Glory and home and ventilation mate after that, man. Then again with that sex one at the end, I'm not quite sure that. Should have cut that a bit quicker.
We're British, yeah.
Right?
That's fine.
That's his Presbyterianism coming out.
He's too switched on.
I'll just leave my sex life to myself. Anyway, right?
Tape back, you wanker.
Try to fucking click. Anyway, this is happy to be here. I'm managing Rodney Relax. I'm going to come in for the Soapbox down this year in a couple of weeks. Organised by the lovely Rosie over there. Thanks a lot for having us, and to Craig for kicking off the wee tour that he's organised. Hello, poetry.
Well done, Craig.
And I would really appreciate if there wasn't as much interjections as there has been in the last couple of weeks. So, shut the fuck
Nail
up.
up. Invite God.
Brody, I'll allow you one comment. Anyway, this is from my book Cubitt. It's there, $3.50, only because there's prints in there, so it's hence the 50p extra. I probably not sell fuck all, he's not give it all the anyway, so it doesn't matter. And this is for the book. I'm going to do 7 points for this wee book here, which was published by Graham Brody on a problem from the press. And then I'm going to do a wee sequence here, Tarantuala Nebula, which should be the next book. So we'll see how that goes. This is the first one I wrote this with Nicky Mello, who is the Tipex Annihilation Syndrome poet. He left for me. We did this via text message, much easier. Swans. For all the queen swans in Northern England, dark, illicit, meat. No more winded birds. Held the winded bird in her hands, transfixed, a wee bit scared, just for a short while of it. Then with funny tears, she let it go.
Beautiful.
That was a piece for Sandy Craigie, who sadly we lost in 2005. One of the greatest Scottish poets ever kind of greatest poet. Anyway, this is a fine poem. Lots of them the night there. This is anybody here read the Sunday Post?
Occasionally.
Oh, right. One. Right.
Once a week.
I always write that you were over 70 to read that fucking newspaper with the views and comments in it. So anyway, this is a fine poet from Can You Do Me a Favour, in which basically old age pensioners ask for kind of stuff and they didn't use the internet, basically. So, can you do me a favour? Searching for pre-1960 chess magazines and post-war Wimbledon tennis booklets, a copy of How Green Was My Valley or Marathon Man on video. Of an elderly relative can't use a DVD player, looking for an LP by Nat King Cole, along with a recipe, date and walnut cake from the Marks and Spencer cookbooks, and a red bus of the moon. I left my knitting pattern in it 2 weeks ago. Early hours. Once again, another dedication to a person we lost about 3 years ago called Stephen Edgar. Nicky Melba and I were asked to write a piece for him. This is what we wrote. Early hours. Early hours. In cars and the batteries run down, and bus shelters drinking wine out of plastic cups. In mornings sharing stories with dogs, ravens, runaway orphans. To those we have known and ones we have lost in space, replaced them. This next piece is about a Kilmarnock willow. And my mother-in-law had one of them in the garden. But it was kind of, it looked like it was not in the best of health, and so she decided to get my father-in-law to chop it down. So I gave her a guilt trip over that one, saying, you know, she murdered this tree in the front garden. And hence the poem, The Death of the Kilmarnock Willow. The death of the Kilmarnock willow on Paisley Drive this morning. His father was seen cutting it down. Nobody seems to know where his mother has gone. Probably at the back of the house, too scared to watch. The thin branches hanging, and so from the axe the final blow was delivered. -61 in Stenhouse. Chelsea's frozen in flight. Remember that guy, Royal Moat, that did the wee shooting for me a couple of years ago? This is a piece I wrote. I was writing at the time actually it happened. I didn't even know about the news report about him actually doing his girlfriend's husband in the Paul Gascoigne incident. I know when they brought him the fish and they can't extend that. Just merely serendipity, coincidence, really. New Kid Target held the gun close as the car door wrenched open. Crows ripped faces in woods as detectives ran into the fields. Those who wept felt that it was time for the weapon to be handed over. As they pulled the trigger, the police went looking for a new Kid Target. End of the movie. Here's another fine point. Anybody here take that fan to top?
No.
Right. You're over 40.
Hit you right now.
Neil Ash's here. Take that fan to top. Okay. Yes.
Need the mix.
What are we getting named? That interjection's alright. Yes. Well, this is for a piece in the Sunday Herald. The guy who's reporting on these 40-year-olds, 40-plus-year-olds, going to take that concert in Newcastle and all places, so you can imagine it. On a wet Monday night, didn't matter to these lasses. Found that. Staggering around weeping on pavements, alcohol-related take that, mammy, army babies, tucked in innocence and continent excess, teeny bopper style fueled by white wine and vodka, behaviour of women come out, collapse, take a leak in the streets, pink glittered eyelids, peed in their pants of emotional strain, drunken stagger down a few beers, kids back home, beyond the walls, faint, eerie wailing of grown-up women, not unlike any Saturday night with hordes of middle-aged women on the pool, hope to get lucky. Morovia, of course. And this is the last piece from this collection, Cubitt of Cubitt New. Basically, the poem is kind of inspired by Brighton Rock, and of course it was a remake of the movie as well, which is, I thought it was no bad myself actually. So, anyway, so this is just a wee piece inspired by that. Cubitt of Cubitt New. Cubitt of Cubitt New got gate killed, searching for murder in seaside towns, where birds swooped under piers, white in obscurity. In winter, snow fell covered tracks, tramwheels creaked around bars, a whisper, not too audible, of colours' identities. Cars left on tables, lovers in restaurants, cabaret singers, late night trysts in low-rent hotels, guns in the attics of hoodlums' quarters, persons unknown who cry at night, knowing in the morning they will die in the underground station, the sound of the train, the last thing they will hear. Cheers. This is the kind of second part of this reading. Jimmy, away.
Aye.
Take care, son.
He's heard it before.
What's out for the watch house? Well, let Jim go first. Right, Jim, the performance must continue. Good night, Jim. A great poet has just left the room. This is
A great poet stole you.
well, I'm not bumming myself up, okay? I'm just doing the shit. Right, this is a sequence, a 16-point sequence called Tarantula Nebula. If anybody can tell me where the Tarantula Nebula is, I might even give them this wee manuscript to take away as a souvenir.
So the universe.
I'm not, it's in the universe somewhere, of course it is. It's one of the first nebulas to be discovered through the telescope. So anyway, it's a poetry of terror, this whole sequence. Psychological terror, political terror, and physical terror and violence, the whole sequence. So I'm just going to start off with a piece about the witch hunt craze in the 14th, 15th century, and then from there go into a few pieces about the genocide in Rwanda in 1994. That's how it's going to close off. Right. European witch hunt craze. Witchcraft was to be explained by an identity of procedure rather than by the identity of experience. identical works of reference, identical instructions to judges, identical leading questions supported by torments too terrible to bear. All the accused that were ever taken were tormented and tortured. So after this manner we were obliged to admit the fundamental subjective reality for every victim whose story had been created or improved by torture, but could be trusted accounts of a persecuting society against another with which it was at war with. Most of them that were taken in the witch hunt craze were victims of the persecutors who directed the judges in the way that they should go. Intellectual elaboration. A common received error is never utterly overthrown until such times as we go from signs into causes and show some root or foundation that is common to all, where it may clearly appear as to how it has come to pass that so many have been put to blame for so much of the time the suffering unforeseen. And that in no way excuses what happened in the genocide in Rwanda in 1984. The disappearance of escape networks. There was lots of them in all other wars. The Second World War, the First World War, there's all these stories about people escaping through little routes, little paths, under bushes, allies where you least expected them and that. But in Rwanda, there was no such thing as these escape networks. They were all closed off. Even in the most brutal of conflicts, lovers met secretly in towns that were besieged and flattened by artillery. Slender paths through cornfields provided safety valves away from the killing. There was a disappearance of escape networks. No links among the herders' tracks. No web of hiding places among the survivors. The uninhabited forests between the marshes and the border frontiers. Wonderful stories, incredible romances, amazing gestures, poignant collaborations, humble and admirable deeds of solidarity between the enemy lines, for patching things up across the trenches, comradely impulses, gestures of compassion, all were absent. Rebellious adolescents and a gang of burdened toughs created no civil disobedience in the villages, for this was the time for machetes. Normal people, not professional killers, did it. Of those they slaughtered, what had they done? Pursuit of prey. Like safaris without cameras, in the morning they would come in the pursuit of their prey, come up in rows like driving antelope into the places you were hiding. Then a new line of attack to finish off the wounded. Young people with nimble legs would slice through the air. Others would run straight out and out of breath. They were caught and cut to pieces. After the hunt, they went back down the hill in their triumph, looting houses and cutting the strays, drinking beers and arguing over the bragging rights. Who had went in without a fuss and whoever's hesitant. There was always somebody behind them to do the job. Maybe quickly, maybe slowly, depending upon the individual, which way you would die. And this is the final piece of the sequence. We did not see them die, and this is basically the story of a guy called Innocence, and talking about how he lost his young girl and his wife. We could hear the grenades, see the smoke rising from the buildings. Women and children had taken refuge where they were going to kill them all, so we ran from them. When you spy a figure in the distance that looks like one you've lost in the middle of the street, and you do not know how they died, it is better to get killed elsewhere, away from your loved ones, than to watch them helpless as they get murdered. It gets the better of love and fidelity. These sentiments are engulfed when we are at the edge of life. This is why we thought it better to go out of sight, and the others did not wish for our memories of one another to be confiscated. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Very short. Accelerate the increase. To accelerate the increase, the paradox of sentiment, having terror as a basis. Good night. Cheers.